This week, we're going to talk about 3 common errors with the driver. The driver, a club that all of us want to hit really, really well, far, not only that, but also very accurately as well. We're going to talk about 3 common errors here with the driver, and not only that, we're going to talk about how to work on them, how to correct them. The driver, the club in your bag that's a little bit different than most others in the bag, and one that causes us sometimes the most grief. It is how we start most holes, and for most of us, we're trying to hit it very accurately, but not only that, but hopefully far as well. We're going to talk about those 3 common errors, and we're going to talk about how to go ahead and work on them as well. And when it comes to the driver, it's different than any other club in the bag. This is a golf ball that we have teed up well off the ground, and we're trying to hit it really high, really far, and very accurately. So this long club causes us sometimes a lot of grief. And let's talk about the very first error that we tend to run into. And the first one is that we tend to see has to do more with our grip. Now, believe it or not, the grip is our only contact with the club itself, so it has such a big influence not only on how we're going to swing the club, but also how we're going to affect the face and how the face is going to be delivered to the golf ball. So when it comes to the grip, one of the very common things we tend to see is that people tend to get the club too high into the palm of their hands. This will actually reduce a lot of how much the wrist can bend and fold throughout the swing. So ideally, most of us have heard before, we want to sort of get the grip to cross right here through the middle of the index finger towards the bottom of the pinky finger. And when you wrap those fingers around the club, then allowing the pad to rest on top. Now, when we do this though, because most of us are focused on trying to get it into the fingers, what we tend to do though is we tend to look at our hand and we open it up like this, so it's facing the sky, to place our hands on the grip. But when we do this though, again, right away, it starts to go more towards the palm of our hands and also places our hand in a very weak position. So ideally what we want to be able to do is let's point our fingers more down towards the ground, okay? So we can't really see where it's crossing. We can then sort of feel where the grip is placed against our fingers, okay? Once we feel them across the middle of our index finger towards our pinky, wrap our fingers around now, placing then the pad of the hand on top, and away we go, a better placement of the club in the hands. Give this a try and make sure you take your time when doing so, because this again has such a big influence not only on the club and how we're going to swing it, but also on the club face as well. Okay, number 2. Now, a lot of us know that we are trying to place the golf ball a little farther forward in our stance so we can then sort of launch the ball high and fairly far. So our goal in doing so is getting that golf ball closer to our lead foot. Now, depending on the player and how wide your stance is, this can change, but ideally closer to the inside of your left foot is not a bad place to put it. Now, when doing so, what we want to be aware of though is that most of us love the idea of still facing the golf ball. So we tend to get the center of our chest looking at the golf ball. And what this does though is it starts to level off our shoulders, okay? And actually what it does, it tends to make me lean a little bit more towards the target. Now I'll show you from this view as well. If I did that same setup and actually faced the golf ball where it'd be forward in my stance, you can sort of see how my shoulders now and my torso is aligned up well to the left. This will have such a big impact on how I'm about to go ahead and swing the club. Majority of the time, most of us tend to start to swing the club on the downswing more towards the left. So what we want to be able to do though is figure out how to adjust this. How do we set up now so we feel we have the correct ball position, which is more forward in our stance, but also make sure we have our lower body and our upper body lined up correctly. So if the ball is placed forward in our stance, place your left hand on the club first, okay? Lengthen your left arm. And what we want to be able to do now is reaching around underneath to sort of grab the club, or placing our right hand on the grip. What we're looking for here is our torso, okay, what we could describe most of the time as our shoulder line, is actually more square or in line with our hips, our knees, and our feet. Now this isn't always for everybody, but for the most part we're trying to avoid the idea that we're trying to lean more to the left to face the golf ball. This, from the face-on view, will really look like your head is more towards the center of your stance and you're looking more towards the back of the ball. This is encouraging, so now we can feel like we can actually swing more up towards the ball, again launching it high and hopefully far. Okay, third common fault that we tend to run into with the driver, and it actually robs us not only of some accuracy but also distance as well. When we're set up to the golf ball, what we'll tend to see is it is such a long club, so it takes a little bit more time to go ahead and turn and rotate to the top of our golf swing. But what ends up happening, because the driver for us tends to give us a little bit of grief and we're not necessarily as accurate with it, we're going to tend to under-rotate. So if you watch as I perform this backswing here, I'm going to go ahead and start to turn a little bit with my torso, and then I'm going to start to pick up the club with my arms. Now this may look like I've done a very nice long golf swing, but what ends up happening though is I haven't turned my torso that much, and in turn my lower body hasn't moved as well. So the goal here though is to get a feel for how big of a rotation we actually can do. And this isn't the same for everybody, but a neat way to sort of explore this would be to set up into your golf posture, making sure again ball position is correct and then your upper body and lower body are aligned correctly. From here though, now what we can do is we can take the club and place it onto our shoulders. If we hold it here, we can now go ahead and rotate our torso. In turn, this will rotate our lower body as well. And now we can sort of see how big of a turn we can make. This is going to probably feel quite a bit different and feel like an extremely big turn. And not for everybody this is going to feel comfortable because we're looking so far behind the golf ball as we've rotated to the top. Okay? Now, another way to do this to get a feel for how big of a rotation you can make is if you go ahead and set up into your posture again, dropping the club, you can now put your palms together. And what I want you to do is keeping your lead arm lengthened, take your right arm and now reach it up behind you, opening up your upper body. If you feel this now, you're going to feel like a big rotation. It's going to feel like a very, very big wide turn. Again, this can have such a big impact on the driver and again, help us hit it not only far, but also straight.